so good to finally meet you, Ingrid LaFleur. We get to do it here in Dubai, which is a very sexy place to be, saying hello to one another.
Definitely.
Connected by our friend and mutual Femmefuture Society member, April Rinna, who I've known for a very long time, and who thought that you and I would connect. I remember seeing you in the hallway last year, passing by me with Geshi, and I'm really excited to meet you. So I'm glad we get to have this conversation here. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
It is really fascinating to be here in Dubai, having this conversation about where the world is going and how our contributions to it and the various places where we think that we can each add to the tapestry of all that is happening and hopefully to the confidence of what is happening. So the whole genesis again of the Femmefuturist Society was born out of partly curiosity. There's a list of top female futurists that was published at one point in Forbes, and we're like, ooh, who are these women? I want to go get to know them. And it's the same thing you would do if you were sitting down and having coffee together, right? It's got to know your background and kind of what you're passionate about and what you're doing about it. But then I think it has taken on a greater urgency in the fact that we are moving to such a fast moving and very fast shifting future, and the contribution that we want our voice to have in that future, especially when you think about an AI-led world in which there will be potentially even more gender discrimination in there, as women are not jumping into the technology quite as fast as men, partly because we're trying to be thoughtful about it, right? So I just think that these conversations around how we see the future, our optimism for the future, our passions for how we want to help shape it, and the sense of agency that we're bringing to it are the thing that excites me in every one of these conversations. So I'll let you introduce yourself. You have such an extensive background with all these different component parts to it. So how do you describe yourself when someone says, Ingrid, who are you?
Oh my gosh, how do I describe myself?
Yes.
Depends who I'm talking to. I'm at once a cosmic being and also a curator of Afrofuturism, a futures researcher, a pleasure activist, and just an Afrofuturist. I founded the Afrofuture Strategic Institute in 2020. We hold workshops and world building exercises to really cultivate that futures consciousness. And for me, that is the foundation of all the work that we do as futurists, really helping people to expand their imagination. I see a lot of people are kind of afraid to think over and beyond, but also to create those mind shifts that are necessary to bring forth just and harmonious futures that are balanced with the earth, the cosmos, and each other. I really think it's a wonderful time to be in this industry because we're becoming more conscious about our work and our responsibility and what it means to be accountable. Because futures work to me is very, very sacred work. You are bringing into manifestation what you're imagining, and that's not to be taken lightly. And so really helping people to imagine beyond their fear, their doubt, some of the challenges that may have been cultivated with the stories that they tell themselves. It's really beautiful work that we're doing, and I'm really happy to be part of it.
I want to dive into all the different parts, but Afrofuturism, more specifically, I think is a term that not everyone is as familiar with.
Yeah.
Right. And I love the way you describe it as a spiritual technology.
Yes.
So do you want to go into helping us understand that better?
Sure. Historically, it was coined in the 1990s by a cultural critic named Mark Derry. And then a Yahoo group was founded by Dr. Alondra Nelson and DJ Spooky and some others. And I was part of that. And it was very like a fun group. And it was through that we really started thinking deeper about its definition. I like to say it's an ever-evolving arts movement. It's multidisciplinary, so you find it in architecture, fashion, literature, music, everything. But we really are centering the Black body and the dreams and the desires, the joy, the concerns of what it means to be identified socially as a Black person. And And what that means is that we revisit some of the histories that were not really given in schools through mythologies, legends, cosmologies, spiritual practices that come from Africa and the African diaspora, but honestly, the global indigenous world. And then we look at the intersection of race and technology and science, their impact on our futures very specifically, because we have a unique existence in this world, challenged by notions of anti-Blackness. We have to kind of craft our own destiny. And in order to do that, is we have to pull from these various histories, reorient our present, and create a new narrative for our future. So a lot of people think of Afrofuturism as a liberation movement. I definitely see it as a way for us to become inspired. You know, the artists of Afrofuturism really help to kind of express the beyond space. Afrofuturism is nonlinear. So this is the arts help to really describe what that means and what that looks like. And so for me personally, I have been in Afrofuturism since the 90s. And then when I moved back home to Detroit, Detroit's a majority Black city, and we were going through a lot of economic issues. And I just knew that we needed a new narrative about our futures that wasn't shaped by other forces or those who are not Black. And I thought Afrofuturism would be perfect for that. And so it really became about Afrofuture thought and philosophy and practice. Like now we need to really build and create in the now that which we're imagining for our futures.
But I think there's something from an observer's perspective, looking at it from the outside, right? We talk a lot about science fiction in the traditional world of imagining the future, right? You look at Star Trek, or you look at every dystopian science fiction movie you've ever seen about what the future could look like. I think Afrofuturism has a different, I don't know if it's texture to it or depth to it, or that it's pulling from the past in a really extraordinary way, right? To your point about the traditions and the rituals and the sacredness and the spirituality, but putting it into this really extraordinary world that has not existed, or that, you know, sort of the Black imaginary, I think is another really great term for this, right? To really propel all of us, I think, into an understanding of the future that is much more dimensional. Again, just more textured. I feel like when I look at Afrofuturism work, it has a very different kind of feel to it than typical science fiction does.
Right, because it's culturally based and it doesn't move, or it isn't founded in whiteness, which tends to be the default. And it doesn't make that assumption. And this is why after Afrofuturism was coined, we have Afro-surrealism, Chicano futures, Indo-futures, indigenous futures, you know, because everybody has a different trajectory based on their histories, based on you know, the context. I mean, there's European futures, there's all kinds of
women's
futures.
Futurists. Can we ever like a femme futurist? I mean, femme futurist is basically sort of that, but I don't think we have taken it to the imaginative, imaginary,
I think,
state.
Well, within Afrofuturism we have.
Yeah.
So as Black women, we've definitely gone into that space. And so that's why it's really nice to be culturally specific, so that you can bring in those elements that really speak to you. And the thing is that Afrofuturism, we deeply believe we've always been futurists, even in the ancient part of our lives, or part of the legacy of being Black. We've, you know, deep in Africa, they were futurists in a lot of ways, in terms of the way that they were not only imagining but preparing for futures for future generations,
or just thinking out in terms of generational timelines, right?
Multiple. So we pull from ancient past and near past. And if you think about our near past as a Black American, my ancestors had to be futurists in order to survive what they survived, in order for me to sit here in Dubai with you. And this is why I am very ancestrally based in my Afrofuture work. I believe in honoring the ancestors, referring to their wisdom, and seeing what can really work with our modern world. I think it's important to have that connection because it grounds you, and then it reminds you that really what we're doing is nothing new. What's new is the material that we're using. Yeah.
So the sense of time, I think, is really interesting, right? People always ask me about how far into the future I look, right? And whether it's people think they're looking to the future when they say 3 to 5 years, right? Or they're 50 years or multiple generations or whatever. I feel like yours is timeless. Like, is there a sense of like time with a capital T?
No, I don't do that. Yeah. But also
it's very liberating.
Yeah, I don't really adhere to time period. Like people ask me, "Oh, well, when were you?" I'm like, I don't know.
You know, when I went to Nairobi or I went to Western Kenya and I was hanging out with a Maasai family and I was asking about how old his mother was. He was like, "We have no idea. We don't mark birthdays." I'm like, "Oh, that would be really liberating too." Right? To really think about it really differently in that way. So as you imagine the world that you are literally imagining and painting, and it goes across sort of a boundless space.
Yeah, and you can mark time cosmically. I mean, there's so many other ways to do it. A calendar doesn't always work.
Yeah, but I think, again, just the freedom of breaking out of that construct.
Completely. It's wonderful. Yeah.
So what are you most passionate about these days? So there's this litany of things that you do, from pleasure activist to arts curator to workshop. I mean, your dream workshops actually sound really fascinating to me. If you want to talk about those for a minute.
Sure. So I hold world building workshops about once a month. And they have a different topic. The last one was on the future of Black motherhood. The next one in December will be the future of Black fatherhood. And then January, it was requested that we do the future of time. And we gather and we use a method that I created that combines foresight and Afrofuturism that really kind of helps us to move past our mental limitations, and maybe kind of through understanding systems of oppression, kind of break out of replicating those systems when we're imagining the future. So the world building workshops are open to anyone and everyone. And
they're online or they're in
they're
person?
all virtual.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and we gather, and I mean the future of Black motherhood. I always start with a meditation. We didn't even get into our exercises, and I was just so high from that meditation. The joy that they have in imagining and co-creating different worlds together is amazing. And so for that one, like the end product was creating a news article, an announcement. And so one group thought about creating holograms from our uterus, and then so that we can like prototype certain ideas before bringing them into reality. And then because of my workshops, I created a course that's self-guided online, so that you can go at your own pace. Because I found that certain exercises were pretty triggering for people, like causal layer analysis, which is quite popular. Exercise, every single time I do it with a majority Black American group, getting through that one side of really getting into the myths and the stories that inform certain systems, it's very emotional. And this is why I have these various rituals built into my method to help support you energetically and spiritually. I'm very sensitive to the fact that everyone has a different relationship to the now and to the future, and to our past. So, so the method is really to just really kind of guide you, ease you into certain ideas and concepts, so that when you're building this world, it's really coming from a more pure imagination. I guess is a good way of saying it. An ethical imagination is activated, and then hopefully your Afrofuture consciousness can be expanded, which I think everyone has access to.
Who's most drawn to this work and to the workshops? Like, who do you see coming
Yeah, most of my world builds are Black women come.
across the world
Yeah.
or specific to the US?
Right now, majority of them are from the U.S.,
Okay.
but Dream Weaving Dream Weaving with Dinkinesh is the online course, and that's been any background, every background
That's
you can
awesome.
think of around the world. It's been way more diverse in its participation. Yeah.
I love that. I think that so, and Dan, it's interesting, right? Because you go back and forth between the United States and Africa. So you're like practicing this across at least two continents. And do you compare the differences or does one inform the other? Like how
Well,
they're so different in our.
right. Because I'm doing them virtually, there's always that element of distance, unfortunately, that I miss with the in person. But I've done it, the workshops in Rwanda and Lagos, and that's I always get nervous that's as a Black American that maybe I'm a little like outside of their cultural norms or what they would be open to, and they're completely open to choosing a superhero name, which is mandatory to cultivate a mythic self. And so they're willing to play with me and dive into it, and they're pulling from their own culture, and it's really beautiful to witness. I think within a Black American context, I am quick because I understand the culture more to really kind of challenge the various narratives that are put forth. And so, like one workshop I gave in person, they were imagining the future of education, thinking about how to get children into higher education better. And I think everyone is like, right, that's a good narrative. But then when I asked the entire room, is this a safe place for Black bodies? They said, no, it's not. So we really, so then why are we imagining using this storyline, right?
Right.
And so that's what I'm trying to get at. It's like sometimes we don't even realize the stories that are playing over and over again that are just really perpetuating harm. Yeah.
Like the role of higher education. You and I were talking about enmeshment earlier today, right? About all these things. Like how do you start to pull apart?
Yeah.
Like where do you like unlayer?
Yeah.
In some way.
And do we really need higher education?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. I was going to say, can we like challenge that one from the very beginning? Do you have a superhero name that you stick with or do you change your?
Yeah. So it's on my Instagram, actually, Dr. Shiluva. So my name is Ingrid LaFleur. LaFleur means the flower in French. Shiluva means the flower in a Bantu language. And it's like Dr. X. So of course, I'm influenced by Professor X. I really like this idea of bringing out the superhero in you, and so that's my power. And I've with every mythic identity, I ask you to create an ancestral lineage. What's the food you eat? What are the clothes? There's always an object. And so for me, it's the crystals that I wear. I love eating raw food. And my ancestral lineage includes kind of controversial women like Lilith and Mary Magdalene and more, and Dinkinesh.
I love it. I want to go into I would like a workshop that's all about the imaginary feminine. I really want us to really think through that in a much more powerful way than I think that we've done. That'd be really, really fun to go do together. So as we sort of round out, because we do not have as much time in this conversation as we normally do, what are you working on at this moment? Like what is the next thing that is sort of opening up for you? You'll be doing art installation here that you're curating with amazing artists. That's very much in the now. So do you want to talk now or near future? What are you jumping into?
Yeah, I'm very excited about my piano with Pierre-Christophe Gum, Saxofridi, and Munir Ayash. They're amazing myth makers and beautiful, amazing artists, very talented. In the new year, I will be kicking off my podcast, Afrofuture Pleasure. So I'm really excited about that. And then,
do you want to talk about that for a minute? So what is the theme of the?
Oh, sure. Really thinking about various topics that come from my own personal life. I don't usually talk about my life, but I think if we're talking about Afrofuture in practice, I think it's really good to see examples, and so I use my own stories as that example, and then where to find pleasure within that. I have a segment that talks about that says ask an Afrofuturist, so you can ask me any question and I'll answer it on air. There will be some imagination exercises, some meditation and scenarios that I'll ask you to create. But yeah, that will be my podcast. And then I am creating a futures research workshop purely for organizers and community activists. My work from the very beginning has always been influenced by the work that they do. Without them, I don't know where we would be. And they're always putting out fires in the now. And I really would like to arm them with those foresight skills so that they understand what's on their horizon and hopefully become more robust and resilient.
Is there one issue or one opportunity that you really want to focus on that you want people to spend more time and attention on, or you think that we're overlooking, or that your work can make a big contribution to?
Very interesting. I don't know. For me, I just found that most people aren't imagining and playing enough. And I think that that's where my pleasure activism comes in. I like how joy is a healing technology. Audre Lorde talks about that in her essay, Uses of the Erotic, and how to bring in this, that feeling, to feel in this world is so important, to be in touch and not afraid of that. And that hopefully will then expand our consciousness. But more importantly, like, go out, read, experience art, just experience more diversity of life so that you are imagining something beyond the stories that you've been told, right, of what is possible. Because believe me, somebody else is doing the thing that you thought was impossible.
I saw like a brief Instagramming interview with Viola Davis yesterday, and she's like imagining her little self, right, and feeling insecure about all the things that she could have been feeling insecure about. She goes, imagine if I told you that in the future you'll marry your dream man, you'll have these amazingly dream children, you'll have won an Emmy, a Tony, an Oscar, and a whatever the other EGOT thing is, and basically living this life. She's like, you would squeal with joy. She's like, I want us to be able to feel that is a possibility for ourselves, just the way she said it. It's so dynamic. I will just say, what I think is so important about your work is we're in really heavy times right now, where it feels like partly a luxury to feel joy, or I feel guilty feeling it, right? Because you just feel like there's so much intensity. Like, is it okay to feel that? I know one of our friends and colleagues is going to be doing a workshop here about grief. And so I think these things are really just connecting to the emotion, period, right? Or to what it is that we're actually really feeling in this moment, and allowing us to have the full range of them, because it does feel like the people are becoming more armored. And a bit more like steely to try and get through this. And so I think your work is going to be really more and more important.
And I really think it depends on your cultural background. My people have been dealing with oppression for over 400 years. And we make amazing music, and the way that we wear our fashion, and we play together, we eat together, we laugh together, and I can see this across many different cultures. We always find moments of joy and pleasure alone and with others. And just go back to that and know that that can exist. I always say utopia and dystopia always have coexisted, and you can tap into one and the other. Even in the most dystopian moment, you can still feel some taste of joy and pleasure, because it's really the simple things. It's just like holding your mother's hand, making a child laugh. Those are amazing moments that you can just dive into. It doesn't have to be binary. I think that's a very patriarchal construct.
Right.
There is no either or. It's and both. Yeah.
I love it. That is the perfect way to sum this up. Thank you so, so much for your time. Just being here with you, I feel more joyful, and watching your smile. And I really look forward to your panel and to your work next year. I want to tap into your workshops and into your podcast. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Nancy.